Stand clear.
100% Wild Podcast.
So for all you listeners,
hello and welcome to
definitely not your favorite outdoor podcast.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Drury Outdoors 100% Wild Podcast, powered by DeerCast. And that's Matt Drury sitting over there across the table.
Tim Chelswick over here.
Sitting around the place.
All right. So it's a good show today. We got a good guest. Not one of the shenanigan shows where it's just you and I. We actually have somebody that knows what they're talking about.
Right, yeah. We've got Brandon Maddox. Brandon is the CEO of Silencer Central. And this is such a cool topic because I think people are, especially with the focus on predators and with turkey numbers being so low, there's a renewed interest in predator hunting. And silencers are becoming more part of the mainstream for folks who are not only wanting to do doe management on their ground, but also knock some of them coyotes down.
Yeah, we're not talking like GoldenEye 007 silencers here. And I think that's what I really want to talk to Brandon about, and just how they have become so mainstream and really a fabric of the hunting community as well. So without further ado, Brandon, what's up, man?
Hey, thanks for having me. Good to see you guys.
Yeah, good to see you. We appreciate you jumping on. So, we were just talking off air there for a second, and you had mentioned you were just at the SEI show in Nashville recently. I know Mark ran into you guys at the NWTF show in Nashville. You were out at the Hunt Expo out in Utah. So you guys are definitely making the rounds. What do you see when you're out there talking to the consumer when this topic comes up? I mean, I'm sure there's an education piece to it, right?
Oh, absolutely. So, when I first started doing this back in 2005, most people didn't even think they were legal. And most people were kind of like looking at me like, why would I want one? Now we have people coming to the, Silencer Central booth saying, oh yeah, you're the guys that make it really easy, where you do all the paperwork for us and you're able to ship it to us. So, from that perspective, it's been a big change, but I still find there's a lot of opportunity for education just on the process and even selection of suppressors. A lot of people still have the mindset they need one for every gun, when usually you can get one that covers almost everything. I always forget to mention about the benefits of recoil. People sometimes focus just on the sound, but yes, it's still a huge opportunity from an educational standpoint. But I would say that, at least for me personally, in the last 18 years, we have been able to move the needle quite a bit on education, but there's still a lot of more opportunity.
So let's backtrack a little bit and speak about that, 2005, that your background wasn't always in the firearm industry per se. And that was one of the most interesting things that I found when we first spoke on a Zoom call months and months ago. Kind of take us back to where you started and then how you even got into this field.
Yeah, good question. So people do think it's unusual that I'm a pharmacist by trade. So I keep my license up in pharmacy. It's actually how I met my wife, who's a pharmacist. I grew up in the Southeast, but my wife's from South Dakota. So that's how I got here. I mostly worked in sales and pharmaceuticals, sort of moved my way up into the marketing and sales management, leadership, executive levels. And I honestly, when I moved here, started using a suppressor for prairie dog hunting. And I noticed that the prairie dogs were a little bit more astute than we gave them credit for. They hear the shot and they realize what's going on, and they would go under. And it's about 4.5, 5 hour drive from here. And it felt pretty painful to drive that far and only shoot a few prairie dogs. So that's when I decided to get a suppressor. And, the first suppressor I bought didn't really work out that great. So then I bought a second one and it didn't work out that great. It's just, the first one honestly was too heavy. I felt like that a lot of the manufacturers back then were focused more on the tactical market. And then, so I decided to get a second one. The second one, I got a little bit shorter and skinnier, and it was honestly it was too loud. So by the time I'd gotten looking at getting a third one, I decided I think I'm going to get my own license just to make it a little bit easier for myself to get one. So that's when I honestly sort of jumped into the business, mostly just for myself. And the license is pretty expensive to obtain. So I could just see my wife leaning on me as far as, how are you going to pay for that license? You just
not prairie dogs.
yeah. Just so you can enjoy your prairie dog. Now you got this big bill coming in every year to help you get silencers, suppressors easier. So that's when I thought I should probably sell a few just to pay the bills. And what I realized is everyone else was in the same boat I was. They didn't realize they were legal, and they didn't like going through sort of a tough process. It's not a knock on gun stores, but most gun stores it's such a small percentage of their business. It's hard for them to really focus what needs to be done with this. And that's all we do at Silencer Central is the entire process. So it's helped us over the last 18 years get really, really good at it.
Well, for folks that maybe aren't familiar with even what you're talking about when it comes to the process, we're talking about like interfacing with the ATF. And I think when people hear that, they're like, oh, well, what am I getting myself into here? Maybe I don't need or want this piece of equipment. So maybe take us through kind of what some of the regulations are around that and why there's such a kind of bureaucracy there and how you guys have a solution for that.
Yeah, good question. It's funny. A guy came up to the booth one day and he said, you're kind of like my CPA that does my paperwork for my taxes with the IRS. So I was like, I've never really thought of it that way, but that's
He's
a valid
right.
point. It sort of gave additional legitimacy to having somebody, help you through the process. So if you think about suppressors in general, they're part of the National Firearms Act. And in simplest terms, it's just a title transfer. So the feds have us, the dealer, as the title holder of the suppressor. And we ask the feds to retitle the ownership from us to the actual customer. And for them to do that, the feds charge a one-time $200 fee. You hear people talk about a tax stamp. And then also we have to submit your fingerprints so they can run a background check on you. And these laws are written in the 30s. So there was no national database for them to sort of pull you up and see if you're a felon. So in simplest terms, it's a title transfer, and then they're doing a background check on you. And typically, if you go to a local dealer, it's a fair amount of back and forth where, we've worked with the ATF to create a smoother process where we could do everything digitally via DocuSign. And then once it's approved, Silencer Central will just mail the suppressor right to your front door.
Wow.
Well, in the process, because I've been going through it, with the partnership with these guys, we had a chance and opportunity to go through the process ourselves, and they do streamline it. And I think that's the part that really helps, because I wouldn't know. I'm the type of person I would never go do it because of the steps to do it.
Yeah.
And it just seems like, man, I have no idea what I'm getting myself into. I just don't understand or know how to do it.
You can't read.
Yeah, exactly. And it just makes it such an easy step-by-step. They email you. They even email you to let you know like that it's still in process and they're still waiting to hear back. But they'll get on and do some screen sharing with you. I mean, they make it to where they really walk you through. Customer service has been outstanding.
Yeah.
Even something as simple as like none of the guns that I had, I couldn't thread one on. And so they take care of all that. You can send your firearm into them.
Do you send the barrel or do you send the whole?
I sent the whole gun.
Okay.
I took the scope. They want you to take the scope and the scope rings and all that stuff off. But I had two guns I sent in, and they sent the case to me first in the mail.
Wow.
You put everything together. You send it out to them, of course, ahead of time. You tell them what you're shooting and all, what kind of ammo you shoot and all that stuff. They thread it for you and send it back. And really, even that process wasn't like, I was shocked how quickly that process, how it happened. So, maybe work through some of that, because I'm fascinated in how you guys, because you said that you were buying suppressors and not having much luck. And so you decided to kind of go the next step, but that's a big leap from buying a suppressor to actually manufacturing suppressors to then also having the equipment to thread the barrels. And, like the infrastructure that you guys have is really, really impressive. So kind of stair step us into that, how your history, how you got that far into this conversation.
No, good question. So, honestly, the goal has always been, how do we make the process of buying a suppressor simple? Because I would say anyone that's ever thought about it who's on the fence will tell you, when you ask them why they've never gotten one, even people in the industry will say, either I don't know the process or the process just seems horrible. So I would say the focused mission since day one is, how do we make the process simple? So I'll give you a couple examples. Before I had to buy all my suppressors through a wholesaler and then have them shipped to us. And back when I first started, that was 3 months from the manufacturer to the wholesaler, 3 months from the wholesaler to me as the actual dealer. So it didn't make the process simple to get a suppressor if it took me 6 months to get it. So that's when I was like, all right, I've got to hire people smarter than me who already made silencers, that are already in the industry, and let's pay them to create what we want. So that was one step. The other thing is, another thing we do is we let people pay while they wait. Some people, we always worked shows is how we started out. Initially, we worked gun shows, we worked sportsman shows, even farm shows, because they were in the summer. And what I found is guys had a hard time putting all the money up front to pay for a suppressor and then have to wait that time for it to come in. You know, I always use the joke, if you buy a $400 Yeti cooler, your wife's going to give you a hard time when you get home. But if you spent, twice that and you didn't come home with anything, you're going to be in worse trouble. So we let people pay while they wait. So, sometimes guys that'll show up, put $100 down, or they'll call on the phone and put $100 down and then just pay while they're waiting. There's no fees to do it that way. Our research found over the years, the best way to buy a suppressor is through a gun trust. So we just offer it free to the customers. Again, it makes it simple. The barrel threading, same thing. Working events, I could tell people look at me and go, well, how do you put that on the gun? And when you told them, they're like, I don't know if I have a gunsmith that could do that, or I don't know if I trust my local gunsmith. I don't know if he has the right equipment. So we said, hey, let's bring that in-house. We bought a CNC lathe. We hired a gunsmith that takes them all apart. And then we hired a machinist that actually machines them. So it's 2 full-time people. That's all they do all day long. And then probably the final thing that we sort of did that really helped was being able to mail the suppressors to your front door, which is a big deal because a lot of people live in rural areas. A lot of people, I remember when I first got one, I had to take off work because I had to go get fingerprinted at the sheriff's office. I had to go get trust notarized. I had to do all these things. And it just, you're taking off work. It was painful. So we have a completely sort of touchless process that you can do 100% digitally. We even send you cards to do your own fingerprints at home from your own couch. So everything you see us do had a purpose of how do we make it super simple for a person to buy a suppressor. And my insight is that if they have a good experience, they're going to tell their friends and they're going to buy more. And that's why 40% of our sales are actually repeats.
Sure. Brenda, you mentioned trust before. Can you talk a little bit about why that's even necessary?
Yeah. So, the trust got really popular years ago because, again, I talked about the laws that created the whole silencer and this process were created in the 30s. Back then, they had the sheriff sign off on your paperwork, and the goal there was the sheriff would probably know if you were a felon. So it was kind of a mini background check, if you will. And then over time, people realized the ATF defined a trust as actually a corporation, and then there is no sort of background check years ago. So the trust got really popular because of that. Now, unfortunately, Obama changed some rules where they made it a little bit harder, but in simplest terms, the best way to buy a suppressor is through a gun trust. And the reason why is the trust transfers the ownership of the suppressor from us, the dealer, to your trust. So Silencer Central will create a free gun trust for every customer, no charge. And then we transfer the silencer from us as the dealer into your trust. And then they do a background check to make sure you can lawfully own it. But the benefit of the trust is really 2 things in my mind. One, it allows you to share the suppressor. So if you have other people that you want to use the suppressor when you're not there, maybe a spouse, maybe a son, maybe a daughter, maybe a sibling, they're able to use it as long as they're on the trust and they're 18 or older. The other benefit with the trust is you can pick who gets it when you pass away. If you pass away and a suppressor's in your name, it's actually a fair amount of paperwork to transfer it to somebody else in an estate, which it takes care of everything to do the trust up front.
Brandon, I'm curious with all the regulations that were written in the 30s about silencers. Was the government's perspective just in general that these are probably for nefarious purposes and we really got to weed people out? Help me understand the background there.
Yeah, good question. So I've read a lot of history about it, and it's hard to find a really good answer. So some hypotheses are people were concerned about poaching. It was during the Depression, so the thought is that could have been part of it. The other thought is that, handguns, they talked about putting handguns into the NFA process, and they traded it out with silencers. Honestly, what I think, just having been involved in politics myself, I don't think there was an advocate at the table to really step up and say, hey, these aren't a public safety issue. They're not being used in crimes. There's just, it seems like in politics, if someone creates a bad law and there's no one there to raise their hand and say, hey, why are we doing this? It just happens. So that's my guess, is it probably just got thrown in there. There was no one at the table to say, why are we doing this? And then unfortunately, it's just stayed in there.
Can you speak to you touched on it a little bit, but yeah, you're not legally allowed to. So if I have the suppressor in my name and Tim doesn't, he's not a part of the trust or the program, I can't allow him to go use my gun and shoot that suppressor. What are the legal ramifications of that? And what do you have to have on you at all times? Or is there paperwork when you have the suppressor with you? Do you have to have certain paperwork with you in case you were to be stopped by a game warden or, a police officer or anything like that?
Yeah, good question. So, Technically the sort of the interpretation when I've talked to the ATF verbally is that if you have someone with you using the suppressor and you can still see them, like you're out in the field hunting with them and you can still see them, technically you haven't lost possession of it. So they're okay with someone else using it with you as long as you can still see them. The part of actually taking the suppressor out when you're not there, you do have to be on the actual trust to be able to do that. It's sort of like, again, the trust owns it. Think of it as like a mini corporation. Sure. Trust owns it. You're one of the co-owners of the trust. What's interesting about the NFA process is it's underneath all the IRS tax law. So that approval that you get, they sometimes call it like a Form 4 approval or a tax stamp approval. That's actually considered a tax return. So it's highly protected from a privacy perspective. So technically the only person that can ask to see a copy of your paperwork would be a treasury agent, which I would find odd that anyone would ever run into, or a criminal investigator with the ATF, and the criminal side is not that popular, not that common either. So really, there's not too many agencies that can ask to actually see the paperwork on it lawfully because it's protected underneath the IRS code as a tax return. What I have seen is sometimes the game warden might want to run the serial number to make sure that, it's not stolen and that it's actually properly registered, which would be fine because it's a firearm. But as far as seeing the paperwork, you don't really have to show it to anyone. But obviously, sometimes it's better to show it to them so you don't have to worry about them asking additional questions. Most guys will take a picture on their cell phone of the front part of the approval, which has the tax stamp, and it shows, who owns it. You can also take a picture of the addition to the trust. The one thing I didn't mention is typically at Silencer Central, we'll give you a free trust, and our goal is to run just one person through the entire process on that trust, because then only one person has to do the paperwork, one person gets the background check, keeps it super simple. But then once it's approved, your suppressors are approved, we can add as many people as you want at no charge to your trust with a stroke of a pen. There's no additional background checks. There's no fingerprints. There's no photo. So it makes sense to add people after that fact, and it'll come with basically you're creating an addendum to your trust saying, hey, I'm adding this person, and it's good for the person to take a picture of that to have it just in case something comes up.
Now, do you, as the person in the trust, or that is the owner of the trust, do I have to go back through Silencer Central to do that, or what's the process if you later 2 years later you want to add another person or whatever?
Yeah, so we do it free. Obviously, if you wanted to take it somewhere else, you could, but it's basically a template we have that basically says, hey, here's the name of the trust, here's when it was created. I want to add the following person, and just takes a stroke of pen on your part, and we just create that sort of template for you. We don't charge to do that. We do it. I hear my sales guys say we do it for your life. So anytime someone calls in, we just, make an effort to make sure we get people added to the trust. Because, life happens. I know that my attorney came in and said, hey, the wife's no longer the wife. She's the ex-wife. So we need to take her off. So, we do that too.
Yeah. Are there any tax implications towards having a trust? You mentioned.
Good question. Nope, there's not. There's no EIN. And that's a good question, because a lot of people come in and say, hey, I have a corporation. I want to put this silencer underneath the corporation, which you could do. But the hard part is that does have tax implications. If you start adding people to an LLC that has revenue, then you're going to create problems where they're going to have to file for, taxes and things like that. So it's non-EIN. It's specifically just for suppressors. And you could also put, machine guns, short barrel rifles, other NFA type items into that.
Huh. It's interesting to see how much more part of the mainstream silencers are becoming, because when I went to order my Winchester 350 Legend last year, there's an option to order one with a pre-threaded barrel.
Yeah.
So that's what I opted for. So that just kind of cuts out a step when I eventually get my silencer for it.
Yeah, before this, I really would not have thought about that, but now I'm always looking at that. I'm looking at all my old guns too to see if any of them have, I'm like, all right, do I have anything that I don't have to go get threaded?
Yeah.
Yeah, and just a reminder for your audience too, if you have a brake on there, typically the brake's going to come off and it's already threaded. So a lot of people sometimes have this mindset they're going to have to get their barrel threaded, but most guns are coming with brakes these days too. And that's what I talked about earlier, is that, the suppressor helps with recoil. So you're not going to really lose any effectiveness in the recoil reduction by going from a brake to just a suppressor.
Let's jump into that side of it and functionality and hunting with it, using it. We started of course, once we got the guns back and they were threaded and we got the suppressors, we went out to re-sight in the guns, and there is a little bit of a difference, say if you went and sighted in your gun without the suppressor on it, and then how it would shoot once you put the suppressor on. It wasn't a ton, right? Or is it different for every gun?
No, good question. So what I find is typically by putting that extra weight on the end of the barrel. Now, all the suppressors that Silencer Central has are titanium, so they're super light because we're kind of focused on hunting. Um, but even having a little bit of extra weight on the end of the barrel, it's typically going to shoot a couple inches lower. But the beauty is once you sight it in with a suppressor on there, every time you put it on, hand tighten it, and it stops at the same place it did before, it's going to continue to remain zeroed in. But you're right. Just putting a little extra weight on the end of the barrel will have a tendency to make it shoot a little bit lower, typically about 2 inches at 100 yards the first time you sight it in after you put it on. But it'll stay zeroed if you continue to put it on the same place each time just by hand tight until it stops.
Well, that was going to be my follow-up question because so Scott, a guy that helps me out quite a bit on the farms and with all my guns, and him and Alan, another guy here, they went out and they set up the gun because I wasn't able to go out that day. So they set up the gun. And then when I took it to deer camp and up at Dad's place, and I wanted to make sure and shoot it and get a feel for it and, all that stuff, there was a little bit of a difference. And I didn't know if it was because I had screwed the suppressor off and screwed it back on, or if it was just a difference in their shooting versus my shooting. And so you're saying as long as you hand tighten it each time to the same kind of tightness, it should be shooting the same.
Yeah, absolutely. And you'll want to occasionally check, sometimes when I shoot prairie dogs, I might shoot a couple hundred rounds in a day. So you just want to check it and make sure that it stays tight. I mean, it shouldn't come loose because typically carbon gets on the threads and it'll hold it in place, but it's good occasionally just to check it. Like if I'm doing a long range course where I'm shooting all day long, I'll check it occasionally just to make sure that it's still, snug up against the shoulder of the barrel.
You see a lot of people use, it's almost like a glove for this thing, when it's on How does that change or affect how it shoots?
We really like the wraps, and the reason why is because then you could grab it when it's hot and make sure it's tight. So sometimes if you have a little OCD like I do, sometimes you want to check it, just make sure it's tight when you have it down second. Even though it's probably not loose, you just mentally want to make sure everything's in place. But the other benefit of those suppressors is the Devour suppressors. There's like a little rubberized coating that keeps the wrap from creeping off the suppressor. But the other thing is it actually decreases your decibels as well. It makes it even quieter. Somehow it changes the tone of it when it grabs on there, that rubberized texture. And we don't really probably tell people that enough, but we found that design actually does continue to take it down several additional decibels compared to even others that we've seen out there. So there's a benefit too on sound suppression and just being able to grab it. And then also, if you use it all day long, or if you shot it a lot and you're about to leave, you don't want to throw it in without that on there because it could burn, something in your truck or whatever. So a lot of times you could just take it off with a wrap on there and set it anywhere in your floorboard or whatever, not have to worry about it burning anything.
I should mention Scott is part of the, he is able to shoot this legally. So Scott was the one shooting. I'm going to add that.
Yeah, totally.
Well, Brandon, you mentioned the heat. And so talk a little bit about kind of what's happening during the shot, like within the actual unit that causes the suppressed noise and recoil.
Yeah. So it typically scares people when I talk about this because they're afraid it's going to slow down their bullets. So I'll go ahead and say it actually speeds up your bullets. So if you chronograph it, you're going to see 10 to 15 feet per second additional. Nice. And the reason why is almost like having a longer barrel. But it's wicking the gas from behind the bullet out. So when that bullet's going through there, it's basically trying to pull the gas back and slow that gas down so that when it comes out the front, it's cooled down. And the reason why it's cooler is that titanium is wicking the heat out of that shot so that when it comes out the end, the gas, eventually when it comes out, it's going to be cooler and slower, and that's why it doesn't make as much noise. But it's also, if you think about a loud percussion, it's spreading it out too over so it's decreasing it enough where it's over a longer period of time as well.
Okay.
We were shooting the Winchester XPRs, the 6.8 Western, and it's got a good kick to it. It's got a little oomph to it, and it sounds like a cannon. it's just a loud gun. And by putting that on, I mean it totally knocked down the percussion of it. It helped a ton with that, and it really, really helped with the sound dampening. I mean, that was the first gun. It was easy to see the difference that it makes right there, and it was fun to shoot. It was really fun to shoot those, the Winchester, XPR with, the Winchester ammunition. It was fun to shoot it then. The 6.8, I kind of the year before would start flinching a little bit, sighting that thing in.
Yeah, and knew it was coming.
Creating bad habits, but it just kind of helps in that regard too.
And so did you guys actually, I know some of you all probably got a chance to use it too for hunting, because what I find too that's so cool is typically the animal can't tell where it came from, so they don't run. It's almost like they're almost like a little distorted. You know, I would work shows and guys would be like, "Yeah, I missed the coyote," and he heard the bullet drop behind him and he started running towards me. It creates a different phenomenon where they can't really tell where that loud noise came from, so they're like don't know which direction to run in. So if you were to miss, you get that additional shot. And then also, if you're continuing to hunt in that same area and you're able to harvest another animal, you could go right back to hunting.
I think that was the key for our group. Mark Mark and his guys used it quite a bit in regards to herd management. That was really the thing that was appealing to us as we started talking to you guys about the potential partnership. He had already started looking into suppressors because they harvest a lot of does in the late season and try to help their overall herd numbers stay 1-to-1 buck to doe ratio. So I think this last year they killed, and this is over a lot of ground in 2 states, but I think they killed over 140 does, in the last month or so of the seasons during the doe management season in Missouri. And then there was a special one up there in Iowa. So they utilized it quite a bit, and they definitely saw a difference in, deer coming back out to the field, whether it was that same night or a day later or 2 days later or whenever they got the right wind to go back in there. Whereas back in the day, you start shooting a lot like that, everything starts getting a little leery and stops coming in. And now they're seeing it with predators too. So absolutely, you're right. I mean, it kind of just throws it just adds a little different element where they're almost confused as to what's going on. So
it's interesting when I first started talking to deer hunters, because sometimes the deer hunters would give you a little pushback at a show. They would say, "Hey, I'm really only taking 3 shots a year. The first 2 shots are to sight the rifle in, and the ones to shoot the deer. I don't really need a suppressor." And then, I would talk to these guys over the years at the shows, because the same guys come to the shows for years. And then eventually they would go, "You know what, I think I'm going to get one." And then they would come back and they would be like, "I was totally wrong, man. I love this thing. Like now I'm shooting more than I used to. And now I'm taking it, my grandson's shooting with me, my son's shooting with me. It helps with recoil." It's just interesting to see sort of that passion in their eyes. Because at first they weren't really sold, like, well, it sounds like a big hassle for 3 shots a year and 2 of them are just sighting it in. But then once they used it and actually applied it, they're like, wow, this is significantly better than I thought. I sometimes give the numbers. There's about 3.2 million silencers that are registered in America, and there's like 1 million people that own them. So what that tells me is the guy buys one and he likes it so well, he buys 2 more. It's just interesting how that happens. I always say I'm not a tattoo guy, but I'm a potato chip guy. You have one, you can't stop. You just end up getting another one.
That's a good analogy.
Alan's both.
Yeah.
So just in terms of vocabulary, I hear sometimes the words silencer and suppressor used interchangeably. Is that accurate?
Yep. Some people will really get fired up on the internet. It doesn't take much to set some people off, because they'll say it doesn't actually silence it. But so here's what I would say. The guy that invented it called it a silencer. The ATF, the legal term, is a silencer. If you look at Google search results, which they'll show you, how many people search what over periods of time, silencer is the most common name search. That's why we picked the name Silencer Central. But if you talk to someone, they'll obviously say it's not silent. It suppresses it. And of course, like the American Suppressor Association, our trade group, they like to use suppressor because it doesn't sound as scary.
Sure.
And what I do find is if you come to me for the first time, you're like, I've always wanted to get a silencer. But when you come to buy another one, you said, I'm ready to get a suppressor, a second suppressor. So it's just funny how I try to use them synonymously. But I typically, if someone says, hey, I've already got a suppressor, they don't typically say I already have a silencer. They just, they sort of change themselves.
Sure. That's the one thing that it does help suppress that noise, but you still want to use hearing protection, and you still want to, I would think, especially if you're shooting a lot, you're on the range, you still want to be smart about your hearing, right?
It's hearing safe, so I might not be the best example. I typically, just because we've always measured hearing safe from a meter out, because that was traditionally the system that the military looked at, a meter out from the end of the suppressor, but it gets even quieter closer to the ear, which honestly is the main thing that matters. But everything we sell is really hearing safe. So it's, it's kind of up to you. You're right. Some people may want to use additional protection. It just seems like so many people get into situations where that's the reason why they want a suppressor, so that they don't have to have the bulky, they don't have to worry about their buddy shooting when they're not, already prepared. So Most people, once they use a suppressor, they don't end up using anything backup, but it doesn't mean there's a problem with doing that.
So I guess you guys have probably, done tests or studies on I'm sure you have, on the amount of decibels that it actually
Yep.
suppresses it. I mean, is there a standard on all the different
There is.
cans that you're trying to meet?
So so the OSHA says you want to be at 140 decibels or less. And if you look at even like a rim fire, that's going to be around 140 or a little over 140. So a rim fire is technically not hearing safe. But if you put a suppressor on there, you can get a rim fire down to like 115, 118. So it's a significant drop. It gets a little confusing with some suppressors because I would say that our niche and our focus at Silencer Central has always been hunters. So our goal has always been really, really quiet. I find that some cans that are made more for a tactical market, their goal is just hearing safe. If someone uses it in a tactical environment, they only care about hearing safe. And they typically care more about durability. They want to be able to use it full auto forever kind of thing, belt fed type scenario. Whereas what we find with a hunter is they want it super lightweight, so they want titanium. They typically want to be able to take them apart and clean them, which the banished suppressors you can. And then typically they want them super quiet, like quieter is better, especially for hunting. And of course, like you mentioned earlier with predators, people love to be able to be as quiet as possible at night, not just because of the ability to hunt better, but also if you're in more areas where there are people that live, you don't want them to know you're out there shooting that late at night. They think you're up to no good if you're out hunting. Because a lot of states, you can shoot with thermals and suppressors at night, at least up here in the Midwest.
Yeah. So you mentioned these are titanium as far as, they're light as can be. And
yes.
So as you guys, the technological side of it, is there something that sets you apart from your competitors, or is there, are there industry standards kind of everybody's has to meet, or what sets you guys apart in the actual, with the actual product itself?
Yeah. So, I would say that what sets us apart at Silencer Central is just the focus on the hunter. And you'll see that we use titanium. I mean, titanium is expensive. You have to source it out of Russia or China. So it is a lot more expensive. It's also harder to machine. So a lot of machine shops, it'll go through their tooling a lot quicker. One benefit that we have is selling direct, we don't have a wholesaler. So we don't have to pay that margin out to a wholesaler. So the goal was, hey, let's just double down on the product. And now, we're making 100,000 silencers a year. So with that kind of volume, we can go to the individual makers of the raw materials in China and Russia and buy in such large volumes that it can get our price point lower than most people. But I would say the real benefit is the titanium. It's really a premium to be able to have titanium because it's lighter weight. I mean, you get the benefits of aluminum lightweight, but you get the strength of stronger than steel. The other thing that I think sets us apart is if you look at most of our products, they all come apart to clean. And I find most hunters are used to cleaning their firearms, and the ability to clean a suppressor and see inside and see what's going on and be able to get the carbon out, to be able to continue to have that volume to keep it quiet, consumers really benefit from.
Yeah, that's cool. And it's kind of a cool thing to be able to service your own equipment too.
Yeah, and the Banish 30 is our most popular item, and each of those baffles in there are the same. So it doesn't matter which order you put them back in. And some silencer guys are always worried that first baffle's getting the most sort of exposure to the gunpowder and the pressure, and that if anything's going to wear out, it's going to be that first baffle. We always explain to people that all the 8 baffles in there are the same, so it doesn't matter which order you put them in. You can rotate them, and so the first baffle is always going to change just by random chance of taking it apart and cleaning it. So you don't have to worry about too much wear in one spot.
Are there certain accessories that one would need? Is there like a certain rifle that you have where it's like, oh, you're going to have to get this accessory before you can screw the suppressor onto it?
What I find with the Banish 30 is people love the concept of being able to use it on their AR and smaller platforms. So if you have like a 223, a 556, a 22 250, something that you typically wouldn't think of as the larger, 243 and up. We have an adapter that screws into the 308 threads that sort of adapts it down to a 1/2x28, which is the standard for an AR. So that's the most common. I would say, 99% of people love to be able to get a suppressor they can use on both. And that goes back to the whole titanium. When I first started doing this years ago, everything was stainless steel, and it was really too heavy to put a 30 cal suppressor on an AR or 223. It just didn't make sense. You were adding too much weight because it had too much length. But now when you go all titanium, it sort of allows that opportunity to be able to use it on every rifle you own in most cases. you can get a 30 Banish and use it on a 17 all the way up to a 300 Remington Ultramax. So it's got a big area. But to your question on adapters, mostly it's just the adapter to be able to use it on your AR and sometimes like if you have a Kimber or something that's threaded a little bit, like if it's a pencil barrel, it may be a larger 308, but they have to thread it a 1/2 by 28. So just having that 1/2 by 28 thread will help cover, between that and the common threads that it comes with, a 5/8 by 24, you're going to cover 99% of everything.
And their customer support helps with all this process. If it's over your head like it is mine, they walked me through it and told me exactly the piece that I needed. So that was very, very helpful.
That's a good point, because of course we do customer survey studies, and what we found is people do have a better experience if they call us. So I would recommend that if anyone's even thinking about getting a suppressor, just call our team, and they're going to be able to talk you through what will cover what and what the process is, and it makes it smooth to have someone that you can reach out to while you're in the process if questions arise.
Well, and just like DeerCast customer support, the Silencer Central customer support is stateside. I think Mike was the guy's name that was working me through the process. It's just nice to speak with someone who gets what you're trying to do, kind of understands the concept.
Sure.
It's not just walking you through a checklist.
Is everything under one roof there in South Dakota? Or
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we bought an old mail order pharmacy building. Believe it or not, it was my first job when I moved to South Dakota here. But we have forget that we're in an office. We're in a industrial park, so it's perfect. We got 10,000 square feet of just basically warehouse space where we keep our 100,000 silencers. We're waiting for the feds to approve. We have a machine shop for us to do the barrel threading, and then we have the rest as office space. So it's like 55,000 square feet here that we remodeled and just finished mid last year.
perfect.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm excited. I'm excited for my daughter to be able to shoot the 350 Legend next year during deer season, and not because she's worried about recoil, she's worried about the noise, and so this kind of removes that factor for her to enjoy the deer hunt and not fret about it.
Yeah, the 350 we shot that as well, and it definitely. I mean, it's almost like shooting a 22. It's fun to shoot.
I'm excited.
So
yeah.
Well,
Perfect.
Brandon, is there anything else that we may have missed or that we need to touch on before we give you a chance to head out here?
I can't think of anything. I mean, my only thing is everyone I feel like is on the fence about getting a suppressor. Gosh, just give us a call and talk about it. I mean, you have to buy one. Just, talk through the benefits of reduced recoil, not have to wear earplugs, the benefit of us giving you a trust so you can share it with other people, the benefit of letting you pay while you wait, the benefit of threading your barrels while you're waiting, the benefit of mailing it to your front door. You can do everything from your couch, literally. I mean, we had a lot of success during COVID because of that. We had created sort of a turnkey process. The only thing I forgot to mention is we do have stores in 42 states, and that's not so that someone could go there physically, but it's just to tell people that Silencer Central is licensed in every state where silencers are legal. So again, you can buy it from us. We do all the upfront paperwork through our South Dakota location, and then all the back end paperwork's done in the state where you live, and then it's mailed to your front door from there. So we've built sort of a unique network. At one point ATF said they were getting about 500 calls a week saying, how's Brandon able to mail a suppressor to my front door when he's in South Dakota? We're not just in South Dakota. We have stores in all 42 states where they're legal.
What states are silencers not legal?
Illinois, probably.
Yeah, so of course California, Illinois, Hawaii,
Of course, yeah.
New York, New Jersey, Delaware, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts.
I'm shocked.
Yeah.
This is my surprise face.
Yeah. When you work SCI and you see people, you say, "Hey, you guys need a blue wristband because you live in a dark blue state."
Yeah.
Unreal.
So what are you even able to go into that state, like travel through that state with a suppressor?
You can. And the other, most of those states, believe it or not, a dealer, as us can own it and, take it there just because they don't want to put people out of business or in the firearms industry, at least not yet. But yeah, you can drive through those states, and there's some federal protocols that if you have a firearm that's not legal in that state, you can lock it up in a case, and the case is locked and your trunk's locked, and you can drive through. Biggest one for us is Illinois. It just seems like as we're going places, we end up going through there, or even flying. You have to be careful sometimes if you're flying somewhere. If you got stuck there and they give you your luggage, that can be hard to juggle.
Crazy. It's always those of us who abide by the laws that are the most inconvenienced by these silly bureaucracies.
Yeah, I agree. And I did mention, but the good thing about suppressors is my experience is the ATF do not see this as a public safety issue. When Trump first got in office, they tried to get him to deregulate these. So that's a positive. A lot of people are scared to buy them because they think they're on a watch list or someone's coming to their house. There's none of that. I mean, the ATF, obviously they have to treat it as a firearm and it's regulated that way, but they don't see it as a public safety issue. When I call and say, hey, we got one stolen, as going through the mail, rare, but if it happens, ATF doesn't hang up on me, but kind of. I mean, we have to report it stolen, but I want them to get aggressive and to go find it and research why it was misdelivered to the wrong mailbox. And they're kind of like, sorry, it's not a big deal for us.
Yeah. You guys, I guess that's important too, because you have, there's kind of a direct line with the ATF on this subject, right? You guys are not affiliated, but how do you communicate, or how do you have that ability to communicate so easily with them?
Yeah, that's a great question. When I first started doing this, they were illegal in Minnesota, and St. Paul is what oversees us. St. Paul is the head of the ATF for the Midwest in our area. So when I would call there, I just felt like they weren't able to help us because they were illegal there. So what I did is really double down on how do I figure out what the rules are and how they implement them. And since these rules were written in the 30s and we still have to follow the Gun Control Act written in 86, you basically have to get to know ATF and ask them how they interpret stuff. Because since the laws are so old, unless you're asking them, I was concerned we weren't going to be in compliance. So, the honest truth is I just ask a ton of questions. I typically put in writing. I send them a letter. I've been doing it almost 20 years. I always sit on the front row when there's a compliance convention anywhere in the United States and the ATF leadership is presenting. And I always ask them questions. I always say, can we do it this way? Can we not do it this way? One thing that's helped really benefit our business is we have 4 unique variances allow us to do a lot of processes digitally. Doesn't mean we're special. It just means we asked them, can we do it this way, and showed them how it was compliant with the law, and it made it easier for them to inspect us, and also it benefited our customers, which they didn't care about, but at least it was a benefit to us. But no, I just found open communications good with them. I probably get some pushback in the industry. A lot of people are sort of the haters of the ATF, and obviously I'm not a fan, but they kind of have a monopoly on regulating me. And, I don't want to put my employees or customers in a position where, we have to worry. So, I grew up an Auburn fan, so I always say I like orange, but I just don't want to wear full orange jumpsuit. Yeah. So I try to understand, the laws. And I just found open communication works really well. They don't always tell me the answer I want, but at least they're able to communicate to me what we can and cannot do.
Yeah, embrace it, and then you're a couple steps ahead, really, by embracing it and getting out in front of it.
Oh, totally. 100%. Yeah. And like I said, I do find they're willing to work with you. You just got to communicate with them.
I think that's the whole key to this, is as a consumer, as a customer, to know that you're working through this process with you guys and you have thought through it all, that I'm not going to get in trouble. Not that I'm trying to do anything that's going to get me in trouble, but I don't know what I don't know. So you guys do, you're the expert, and your customer support team and the people that work there, they can walk you through step by step. That's the key to it all.
Oh, 100%. It gives people confidence. I always say that at a show that people come up and within 5 minutes, they can tell we know what we're doing. We have a button down process, and they usually say, let's go. They don't say, I want a Ford or Chevy or Porsche or Lamborghini. They're just like, I'm ready to go. What do we need to get? How do we get it started? That's the biggest question the consumer's mind is, how do I do it? How do I do it right? How do I make sure that I can trust these people? And once they check all those boxes, they're like, let's get started.
Yeah. I like it.
Well, we appreciate you jumping on with us, man. It's been great to kind of go through really every step. I can't think of anything we really missed. And where can people find you guys at?
Yeah, just do a Google search, silencercentral.com. Like I said, I do find customers have a great experience if they call, because they can ask a ton of questions. Like I said, that's how I got into it. I put up a booth and a ton of people came with questions, and that's always the thing, is people have a lot of unanswered questions. So I would just call us. And we have a whole call center here, guys. That's all they do is hunt and shoot all the time, so they can answer pretty much any question you have.
One thing, I don't know that we talked about this, but Brandon, from the time, let's say I call to put an order in, when I put the order in to the time it arrives at my doorstep, what's that typical time frame like?
Right now we're quoting 6 to 8 months, which is kind of a big window, but it's always based on volume. So if the ATF gets a lot in, it slows them down. If they don't get as much in, I have seen the economy slow things down a little bit, not on our end, but on ATF as far as the number of applications they're getting in. But they do have an all digital process now. So we do all of your stuff digitally. We upload it to the ATF.
Yeah.
So we have seen that start to pick up a little steam where it's making the process go through a little bit quicker.
Okay.
That is a key element, because if you were to do it, say you're going to a gun store, I mean, that's just a physical piece of paper you're filling out and sending in. And I don't know how backlogged they are on their paperwork, but I can imagine it's pretty massive.
Yeah, and they prefer digital because they could do it about 25% of the amount of time.
Yeah.
It's all automated for them too. They send all your information to get a background check with the FBI. It comes back. It sort of puts it on automated for them. They don't really have enough employees yet. I'm hoping they'll continue to hire more, but digital is definitely the way to go.
Well, I know it may seem a little bit strange. Obviously, we're talking about predators. Doe management right now this time of year isn't really as big of a factor. But if you're thinking about even hunting with one during next deer season, now is really the time to start digging in and starting the process. That way you're not waiting till the last second.
Totally. 100%.
And they'll Silencer Central will send you emails along the way to tell you, like, hey, we're still waiting. It's not like, hey, you have 2 months left. It's not like that, but they'll tell you, hey, we're still waiting. Your paperwork's in with the ATF. Just status updates that tell you, they'll tell you the serial number of the suppressor that you have and all that stuff. So it is a nice process to kind of be kept up to speed along the way.
Sure. Great.
Well, we appreciate you jumping on with us.
Yeah, thanks,
Very
guys.
Informative.
No, I appreciate being a part. If you ever have any other questions, just let me know.
All right, very good. Well, thanks very much. Have a good day.
You too. Thanks, guys.
All right, Brandon.
Bye-bye. Awesome.
I'm excited about getting mine.
Yeah. So you ordered the 350 Legend from Winchester, and you have that, or you're waiting to get that?
Still waiting on getting that.
Okay.
But kind of I got these processes going in tandem right now, because we kind of have a different ordering system for getting Winchester firearms, so that's kind of in process.
Yep.
But the guy, I think his name was Mike, that was the customer service guy. He hunts, he shoots.
They're very knowledgeable.
Because I was like, here's the gun I'm going to get. Which unit would you recommend?
Yeah.
And I think it was the Banish that he was.
Yeah. So the Banish is the brand name or whatever, but then they have like the Brandis 30, the Brandis 45, that's based on what caliber of gun you have. Okay. So he talked a lot. Brandon talked a lot about the Banish 30, and this is a version of the Banish 30 right here. If you're watching, it's
pretty cool.
Yeah. Awesome.
Well, we should say hello to all the folks that we got to meet at the Indiana Deer and Turkey Waterfowl Expo.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was cool. You guys got to go out and look like you met a few of the rack packers and listeners. And that's always fun.
Yeah, it was fun. We got a lot of requests for the fart machine.
You see I
didn't bring it with me today, guys.
See the other deplorables out there. I think Hillary put it.
I think people really wanted to hear the fart machine more than they wanted to talk to me.
I get it. Brandon's gone. Let's
time to let loose.
Holding that in.
You had a silencer on the soundboard.
I did.
Well, our Real Wild clip this week is brought to us by Silencer Central.
Oh,
check that out.
Yeah. Okay. So, the Real Wild clip.
This is weird. You have a predator and a prey animal in close proximity.
Well, it's not weird. That does happen. Predator and prey in close proximity.
But the prey is the aggressor here. So it looks like a juvenile bald eagle on a green field.
So will a bald eagle go after a deer?
They can.
I mean, I get a fawn, but like a mature deer?
No, probably not. But like golden eagles, condors, they have been known to take out full-grown deer.
So we're looking at this. They're in a big green field, and there's a doe, and does it look like maybe a yearling with her? And the doe's walking up to that. Oh, they're both does. Walking up to that. I mean, even as a juvenile bald eagle, it's huge.
It's a big bird. And it to me, it just goes to show how curious deer are.
Oh, yeah.
Because she's continuing to kind of push forward on this eagle. Like, what are you doing out here?
Yeah. So this was, I think, our buddy Chase Saylor filmed this from his tree stand one day. Yeah, that's cool. The other day I was driving to work and saw a bald eagle here. We're not far from the river systems here in Missouri and where the studio's at, and you see them quite a bit occasionally flying around. It's always fun.
Yeah, it's cool. One of my biology professors in college was part of kind of the eagle restoration project back in the 70s, and when they realized that the chemical DDT was thinning the shells on the eggs, and that's what was causing raptor mortality. That's why we had so few red-tailed hawks and eagles and things like that. And then when they banned DDT, there was this little gap, but then these raptor birds started coming back. Because when I was a kid, like seeing an eagle was like, oh my gosh.
I don't recall ever seeing one.
Yeah, it was really, really difficult to see them, but since they banned that chemical.
Other than the Wild Bird Sanctuary, right? Or
awesome.
World
Bird Sanctuary.
World Birds. It was, what was that guy's name? Oh, he was from St. John. Oh shoot! He wore it looked like it was a safari all the time.
Tom something?
No, Marty. Can somebody look this up?
World Bird Sanctuary Safari Man.
But that's really the only time I could recall seeing one is if we went there. But then we went on a cruise. This was like 2006. It was the first time we ever went. The family went on an Alaskan cruise together, and there was it in Ketchikan? I think it was Ketchikan. There was like an island or an area that you could go to, take a tour of, and there were hundreds of eagles. I mean, it was crazy to see them all like that. And then really, I mean, in the last 5 years or so, like you said, I've really started to see a lot more eagles. The other day, we were driving back home to St. John, and we were passing through Bloomsdale, which is where I grew up, and I look over into the field, and there was two just sitting there in the field, and they're humongous. Like as we're driving, I'm like, the hell is that? Is a goose?
You don't appreciate until you're up closer.
Then you drive by, and I'm like, those are eagles. Like, what?
They could take you away, Cam.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm always fascinated when you see them.
There's one of the places that I run is the trail goes next to a sanitation plant, and so there's ducks and geese all over this thing. Especially in the wintertime, and there are eagles that just hang out in the big elm trees around it, and they're hunting that thing.
Yeah, it's always cool. Like you drive up Highway 61 here in Missouri, and let's say you're heading up north to like Hannibal or Kirksville or anything like that. There's a gigantic eagle's nest. It's been there for years, and occasionally you'll see them hanging out over there. It's pretty neat.
The only birds I've ever really cared about are raptors, like songbirds. Turkeys, cool.
Cardinals are cool. I mean, you see a cardinal in the wild. I mean, especially when you're hunting, like other than like the personal meaning it might have for you if you lost a loved one, like that, all that. But in general, seeing a cardinal in the wild is always, I don't know why I'm always fascinated by it because they just stand out so much.
Big time. Yeah.
So I always think, there's going to be a deer. My shooter's going to come now, walk right in front of it. Never happens.
Maybe it's like the 51st cardinal you see. Then you'll see a shooter. Okay, so let's jump into the question of the day.
All right, the question of the day is probably presented by the all-new Finisher Series Turkey Vest, apparel, and accessories from Blocker Outdoors. Built specifically for avid turkey hunters, the Finisher Turkey Series takes the quality apparel Blocker is known for and adds crucial features to help you focus on the hunt and not your gear. So we're getting close to the turkey time.
Yeah.
This is probably a good time to say, here in a few weeks, we're going to have Mr. Ray I, Hall of Famer, on the podcast. We're going to be talking turkey. It was we've already filmed it. It's a fun episode. I think we're going to air it the last week of March.
Yep.
And then that's going to kick off a special
Longbeard Legends
Turkey Series that we're doing through the month of April. I think we got 5 episodes or so, 5 or 6 episodes.
6 with Ray, yeah.
Yeah, so looking forward to that. And I think we've worked it out to where Ray's going to come in and help us host. It was such a fun show to have him on. And he was, I mean, he's the Outdoor Communicator of the Year, like several times over. And like the guy's had a radio show for 24 years. I mean, just really knowledgeable.
He knows everybody. The other thing is he's got dirt on everybody.
Yeah.
He knows all the backstories.
Yeah. And it's just one of those things where he's a Hall of Famer for a reason. He was winning turkey calling contests back in the day. He's one of the best turkey hunters. I mean, one of the best to ever do it. So we're honored to have him sit in with us for a few weeks. So that you have to look forward through April in.
Yeah.
So
someone who knows what they're doing.
All
gonna be
right.
co-hosting.
All right. So Brian has the question of the day.
Hello, my name is Brian. I'm in Northeast Missouri. I was wanting to know what tips you have for finding shed antlers. Thank you.
Man, I saw this video. Our good buddy Mark Kenyon used to be my co-host on the podcast before Tim came to work here. He put a video out on social media talking about the speed in which you need to know when to slow down or when to speed up. And he just got roasted over it. And I get what he was doing. He was trying to just give you some tips on things you may not think of, right? Things to help while you're out there. And boy, he just got roasted over it.
Was it like you walk through a bedding area, maybe slow down?
Exactly. And if you're going through just kind of like a junk part of the property where, it's open and, you don't see any trails or anything like that, maybe that's where you speed up. You're looking a little bit quicker and you're getting through those parts to get to the good parts. But boy, it didn't go well for him. So be careful what you say here, Tim.
Oops, I'm screwed. It's just a matter of time.
Well, so we had Eric Boothen on last year, and this is a legitimate big deer shed finding hot tip. He was talking about how the biggest sheds he usually finds are on north facing slopes.
Yep.
And I guess maybe that the big old mature bucks are kind of staying away from the rest of the herd, which you traditionally think about south facing slopes, especially in the wintertime. They're getting that sun and, so that was a tip that Eric Boothen had for us. So that was a great one.
Well, and your dad chimed in on a DeerCast post that I made a few days back about just the sheer number of eyeballs. He's like, the number of people you have out looking is correlated to the number of sheds you find. So if you can put together a little party, like a band of buddies to go out, your odds are going to increase just by sheer probability. And
there are some guys that just have the eyesight for that kind of thing. Yeah. And I think of like Terry's farm manager, Forrest Bonin, or, guys like Eric Boothen, those kind of guys, they just have a knack for it. It's not only knowing where to look, but there is a certain way.
Second sense.
There is a second sense to it. Yeah. The other thing, cloudy days tend to be easier to spot sheds on. When you got a bright sunny day, they just blend into that floor, the forest floor. So that's a tip that I would have is shed hunting on overcast days seem to make it a little bit easier to pick up on them.
Yeah. Yeah, we went out yesterday, and my buddy Tony is great. He's already into double digits finding sheds this year, and he's been hitting a lot of public ground around St. Louis. And I was walking along, and I really thought I saw the main beam with like a G3 and a G4 sticking out from a brush pile. And I was like, hey, Bo, look at that over there. Oh, what is that? And he went over, and it was a big stick. It was a cedar stick. I thought, this is a really big deer.
So I think we're heading to the farm on Wednesday to do some work, getting ready for a prescribed burn that we're going to do on the new piece. And, we had Logan in here talking about it, Logan Burke talking about it last episode, I believe. So anyways, we're probably filming this a couple weeks ahead of when it airs, but we're getting ready to go out and take a look. So hopefully we'll find a few more, but we've already found 7, a couple deadheads, on this one piece. And my guess is we found so many because it's not been touched. It's not been shed hunted.
Well, that one Lola found was
probably a year old, I'd say. And Cody found, I think, the matching side to that, and it was, it looked like it was a year old. So anyways,
fun. Thanks
for the question, Brian.
You can't find sheds unless you're out pounding the boot leather. So go do it. Okay, the wildlife word. I have an extra bonus option for you. We have A through E today.
Okay.
It's not on your sheet, Matt. This is a custom sheet.
Great.
Wildlife Word, it's brought to you by the DoD signature series of turkey calls from H.S. Strutt, designed by 6-time world champ Mark Drury and approved by the DoD team. The new tongue series of mouth calls are designed with cutting-edge technology. We got to start practicing.
All right.
Okay, this is about hens. Hen wild turkeys. 10% to 20% of hens do this. They A, eat their own eggs. B, hassle toms for not helping with the poults.
B.
C, gobble. D, roost in dens underground. Or E, grow beards.
E.
You, sir, are right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, the old bearded hen.
The old 5 o'clock shadow on that gal.
All right, so we are on to shout-outs, Tim.
Shout out. We got a 5-star rating from Joseph98. He says, East Coast Perspective. Funny yet informative podcast to listen to while working. I own a landscape company, so I listen to a lot of podcasts. There are some points that y'all use that I can't transfer to the East Coast. He's in North Carolina, but there are a lot of things that I can transfer to my backpack of whitetail knowledge. I just lost my only private piece, so I'm having to transfer to more public land this year, and it'll be all new to me. Any input on finding properties to gain permission or public land tips and tricks? Deer, turkey, dove, and waterfowl hunter. Thumbs up. God bless.
Well, sorry you lost your spot. It's so tough, man. You find a spot. It's like do everything you can to hold on to it, and sometimes it's totally out of your control. The person that owned it might have sold it, or so all of a sudden their nephew wants to hunt, or and you're kind of at the mercy there. That's just a really tough scenario. As far as finding new spots, I think we had an article in DeerCast. This is a while back that Cody Thurston.
Oh gosh,
had done about finding spots to hunt. He was in the Kansas City area, and he kind of created a forum, so to speak, of what to write to these people. So he would go at the time, this is before DeerCast. He was using on X, and you'd find the parcel data. Yeah. We have that in DeerCast Maps, where you have the parcel data and the tax address, and so you can write these people. He wrote like 100 people, and he might have 5 that replied in a positive manner, and you might get 1 or 2 spots out of it. But there are ways to do it. And, I wouldn't put it past the old knock it on a door too. I mean, a lot of people are adverse to face-to-face communication these days. Yeah. And so you might have an edge up by doing something like that. But no, you might get a lot of doors slammed in your face as well.
Yeah. And you have to also be mindful of your overall look when you go to something. Like, don't go in all camo. Don't go with a weapon.
If you have a cute daughter, take her.
Yes, exactly.
It might help you if it's an older lady that that owns a piece, her husband's passed away, or something where it makes it a little more comfortable than a stranger coming up to a door, which is pretty rare these days without being a salesman.
Right. So. Yeah. Or can I come shed hunt your ground? And then maybe that opens the door to something. Yeah. So thank you for the review. We appreciate it.
All right, we're to the newest Rack Pack members.
And 2 of these are not new. 2 of these are guys that came up to me at the show. Oh. And they said, hey,
I want a shout out.
We're in the Rack Pack. We never got a shout out.
Okay. All right, so every week I read these Rack Pack members. It's a Facebook group, a private Facebook group. If you type in Drury Outdoors Rack Pack, it'll come up. It's kind of the Rack Pack is kind of the listeners and the audience for the podcast. So anyways, Tim lists a bunch of names out. I read them. I mess them up. There's a fake name in there I got to sniff out. We have Sam Ryan, Curtis Bosher. Timothy Can't Call is the fake name, and it's a true statement. Trent Miller, Luke Miller, the Miller brothers, the Miller boys. All right, we got Briar Davis, Trin Templeton. Oh, Trinity Timp. Charlie damn it. Charlie Guretas? I probably messed your name up. I'm sorry, Charlie. Sorry, Charlie.
We'll give you your money back.
And we got Darren Ropp. Doesn't he help us out in Iowa?
Yep.
That's what I thought.
He's just now joining the Rack Pack. Better late than never.
We got one.
Yes.
All right. Welcome aboard, boys and girls.
Sam and Curtis both stopped by to say hey at the DeerCast booth.
Yeah, thanks, guys. So. All right.
Okay.
Well, we've gone long. Producer Matt's probably...
We're
pulling his ears
trouble.
out. Yeah. All right. We better get going. I got a Zoom call. I'm 5 minutes late.
All right. Stay tuned for the Longbeard Legends series, guys. It's going to be legit.
2 weeks out, but it's going to be a good one. All right. Till next time.
See ya.
Peace out.
DeerCast is now supercharged with maps. Get ahead of your game with killer new features like live Doppler radar, wind check out to 5 days, virtual rain gauges, GPS path tracking, and more. Plus, get our 14-day revolutionary DeerCast prediction and access to DeerCast Track. Prep, predict, and pursue with DeerCast.
We're adding new videos every week, so make sure to click that subscribe button and check out all of our amazing content. This episode of DoD TV was brought to you by Leupold.